Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the Neighbors from Hell subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the pod, you can do so by email at karmastoriespod@gmail.com. Alright, on to today's stories. Let's see just how nasty our neighbors are. This story comes to us from XXOOXXXOOXX. Neighbor has gone nuts since having our shared property line surveyed, revealing she actually has about 5 less feet than she thought. I find the whole thing hilarious. Me, 39 female, and my husband, 49 male, moved into this house in 2018. The neighbor in question technically lives on the cross street to ours, but our driveway is adjacent to her backyard. When we moved in, we were under the impression that the property extended about 3 to 4 feet-ish beyond the edge of our driveway, which was fine. We've used this as a guide for where we mow that strip of lawn. Generally, we would mow 2.5 to 3 more widths, and it was never an issue. This lady is in her 60s or 70s, I'm not really sure. Like I said, never had a problem at all. I had a few brief conversations with her, and the same with my husband and hers during the first couple years we lived here. Not really even enough to consider them acquaintances, but enough to be civil and give the occasional wave. Her husband passed away in 2020 or 21, I really can't remember. I don't know if it was COVID related or not, but he had health issues beforehand, so I'm not sure. Since then, she has hired a lawn care service to mow, leaf blow, etc. At the time, my husband worked second shift, so we would sleep in a bit most days till 10 or so. Our bedroom is adjacent to our driveway, and the way the room is, the only way to put a bed was with the head along that wall. But that wall has 2 huge windows. It's an older house, and the windows are pretty thin. We started getting woken up at 7 a.m. weekly to a lawnmower and leaf blower directly outside our window. Finally, my husband checked it out and found the lawn boy driving his riding lawnmower up and down our driveway to access her yard, and standing in our driveway to blow leaves. This would literally be less than 10 feet from our heads as we slept. He had enough and went out and got this guy's attention and told him, look, this is my driveway, it's not a thoroughfare for her yard because it's convenient. The kid, I don't know, early 20s-ish, apologized. But this lady has had it out for us ever since. About a year later, my teenager was raking leaves to the apron of the yard because our town comes along and sucks them up every year. He was putting them on our side, and she came out and yelled at him saying they were on her lawn. He said he thought our property line was from the telephone pole over. She said it wasn't. Whatever. Maybe a month later, I was returning from the store and saw she was trying to pick up sticks in her yard. The way she moves makes it clear she has back issues. Like she can't bend, she has to crouch and reach. I asked her from my driveway, Mrs. So-and-so, do you want some help? No answer. Maybe she didn't hear me. Louder, Mrs. So-and-so. She didn't turn around, just no, with an attitude. Fine, I went inside and figured she was still salty about the whole lawn boy situation. A few months ago, my husband was hosing out our trash can and dumped the water along the edge of the street on our strip of land. The street had storm gutters because we get a lot of rain. She had a fit about it and came out to yell at him. He told her he isn't some kid she can yell at and leave him alone. Within a week, she hired a guy to survey the land. Come to find out, her land ends on just the opposite side of the telephone pole, which gives her like 5-ish less feet. She's all butthurt about it, but whatever. So about a week or so later, it's evening and I'm packing up the car for my husband to go to work as he's on nights now, and I just kinda glance in the direction of her house as I start the car and see her and some guy standing at the window just effing staring at me. I'm literally doing the same thing I do every night when I pack up the car. I don't know what the deal was. So I come inside and tell my husband these people are just standing there being creepy and it's unnerving. He goes out to put something in the car, and this guy comes out of her house and goes off about how we're harassing her and all that. My husband tells this guy to back off. I'm just trying to get ready for work. So the police get called and it's a whole dumb thing. Her and this guy get trespassed from our property, and my husband gets trespassed from her property. I had stayed inside during the whole police talk, so I didn't get anything. She's literally crying to the cop that we have cameras looking into her windows. We have security cameras for the same reason most people do, in case something happens. Like we give an F about what's going on in her place. The officer told her we can have 100 cameras if we want. Last week, she had the city survey. They put little flags where the gas line or whatever is, so we assume she's going to build a fence. Then, she cuts down this huge bush in her yard that's always been there, so again, we're getting excited she's going to build a fence. Monday morning, 6 a.m., she's standing in her window watching me put our garbage can to the curb. Today, her daughter comes and puts a security camera pointing into our garage area and backyard, which she couldn't even see until they cut the bush down. We're cracking up. It's freaking hilarious. So of course, my husband now intends to get 3 more cameras for that side of the house to freak her out even more. I don't know, maybe we're being petty buttholes. I think it's mostly funny, especially since it all started by us not wanting people in our driveway. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Desktop Chill. It says, get a wind spinner to keep her camera busy, plus about 6 fake cameras on that side of the house. She might pop for a privacy fence if you play her right. Another commenter down below called Fit Detective 8374 said, I'll tell you right now that this woman is willing to go to much crazier and extreme lengths than you are. To you guys, it's a funny and annoying thing you have to deal with. But to her, it's all she's focusing on. She's clearly framed this situation in her head that you're harassing and plotting against her. It's best not to poke the bear because you have no idea how far this crazy idiot will take things. You need to build a fence as tall as you're allowed to. Plant privacy hedges and bushes to block her view. Don't install more cameras to egg her on, but do make sure you have cameras covering your property in case she tries things. Buy IR lights and point them at her cameras. This will basically white out her cameras so she can't see anything. If she or anyone else she's with tries to talk to you or engage, pretend she isn't there. Ignore the crap out of her. Don't say anything and walk away. Maybe it will convince her eventually that you want nothing to do with her, and she might stop wasting her time on you guys and focus on the next thing. I guess you could say that both of these commenters are on either side of the fence on how we should deal with the neighbor. On one hand, the first commenter's idea of putting up some spinners and fake cameras sounds like a lot of fun to mess with people. But on the other hand, this neighbor's starting to get to the age where dementia might be hitting, and in that case, they focus a lot on things that don't really matter, and things could escalate very, very quickly. I completely agree with building a fence, or if that's not in the financial cards, just building a privacy hedge that will stop that neighbor from being able to see you guys and what you're doing every day, which just might help de-escalate the situation if they're not constantly seeing you and you're not always on their mind. This next story comes to us from Taylor Phil. Whole neighborhood is being tormented by one family. About 12-ish years ago, a new family moved in 2 doors down from us with a little boy. They seemed nice enough at first, and they kept to themselves most of the time. The son was very sweet and liked to come over to talk when I was younger. The dad was a loudmouth, but he didn't cause any problems, and our other neighbors agreed that overall, they seemed like a nice family. They had another son, the boys grew up, and now they've become the worst people imaginable. Some examples over the last few years. The kids learned racial slurs from their father very young and started screaming them at any non-white passing person who happened to be outside at the same time as them. The family stocks up on M80s every year and fires them off at all hours of the day. Sometimes early in the morning, sometimes in the middle of the day, sometimes at night without warning. They also let the children light them themselves. They almost blew up a car once. The parents bought their sons four-wheelers for Christmas one year, and they drive them full speed around the neighborhood. We live in the suburbs across the street from a school, so many almost accidents have happened. They don't stop at stop signs or pay attention to cars on the road. Everyone in the neighborhood hates them. When the four-wheelers weren't enough, they got dirt bikes. They rev them as loud as they can for hours, to the point where things hanging on our walls shake. And of course, they drive them around in the street as well. The father installed a trucker horn on his truck and likes to honk it to signal his buddy across the street so they can talk, yell to each other from opposite sides of the road. They also get into honking wars and go back and forth until someone screams at them to stop. The horns are as loud as the horns they play during NHL games when someone scores a goal. If there's an outdoor party somewhere on our street, the kids will circle around the street on their bikes and try to spit at people from a distance. Recently, I, 23 female, had to stop going on runs outside because the father and his friend across the street started waiting for me to return home so they can throw poppers and firecrackers on the ground as I pass by to scare me. A teenage boy that lived on our street brought his friend home from school, and while walking to his house, the friend, who was black, stepped on crazy neighbor's lawn. The dad freaked out on him and called the cops because he was acting suspicious. The dad finds it funny to throw firecrackers at his own children sometimes. I've watched this happen while one of the boys was trying to cut the grass. About an hour ago, another honking war started. I had a really bad day and my head was pounding, and they just wouldn't stop. I opened my window and screamed at them to knock it off. The neighborhood has been silent ever since, but I know they'll retaliate in a few days. I really regret doing it in hindsight, but it's the only thing that gets them to stop. Naturally, nobody else in our neighborhood likes them. Other neighbors have called the cops on them numerous times, but they take too long to get here. And by the time the cop car rolls around, they've gone inside or left for the day. Yelling at them anonymously usually gets them to stop for a few days, but it always starts up again later. One time, a cop even parked on our street and stayed there for a while, but of course, the family decided not to go outside that day. Every year, they get worse, and I don't think they'll be moving anytime soon. How can we get them to stop? We're desperate at this point. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Snewwords4839. It says, cameras and a body cam for your runs. The throwing fireworks at you, get it filmed and call the police. File a report for assault. OP, I agree cameras are probably the best thing, but there's a little bit more you could be doing here as well. The next time the police come, every one of the neighbors that's had a problem with this neighbor from hell needs to come out and talk to the police. There needs to be a group chat between you and all these people so that this can be coordinated. There is strength in numbers, and it really sounds like you need those numbers when the police come into the community again. This story comes to us from Samarab. Neighbors hated us before we moved in. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? My fiance and I bought our first house back in April, and we're looking forward to getting to meet everybody in the area. It was a new construction property built about 6 months prior. First few interactions were fine and pretty cordial, but on our 4th day living here, our next door neighbor knocked on our door first thing in the morning, and she was really angry about a tree branch which had fallen onto our front yard sometime the night before, and said that it was ridiculous that we hadn't cleared it up yet. She left without even saying what her name is. I still don't know it actually. To an extent, I understand bringing up the branch, but I would have dealt with it as soon as I noticed it. I just hadn't yet. It was about 8:30 a.m. on our first Saturday as homeowners. It was really the level of frustration and the way she left without introducing herself at all that tipped me off that there must be something more to the story. So I asked some of the neighbors who I do get along with. Come to find out, the construction of the house was a really rough experience for her. It was determined that one of her trees was actually on my property line and the builders cut it down. I personally would have loved to have kept it there. There were allegations that the builders were trespassing on her property. There was an attempted lawsuit and everything. But again, we didn't know the builders, weren't aware that any of this had happened until we were already living here and several neighbors were already mad. Supposedly there's a group chat where they were talking about this stuff, but hopefully they have moved on to other topics at this point. One of the neighbors I do speak with was like, "It's not fair what they're saying about you." Laugh out loud. Ugh, horrible start. Has anyone been able to come back from something like this and have a good relationship with the neighbors? I wish I could convey to them that I didn't have anything to do with the construction of this property, but I'm not sure how. It bums us out that we have this relationship with several of them based on something we didn't even know about. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Sassy Be Sassy. It says, "You don't do anything to get your crappy neighbors to like you. The next time some butthole knocks on your door at 8:30 on a Saturday, don't be friendly about it. A branch on your yard is none of your neighbor's business. For her to come over banging on your door is rude AF. I have zero tolerance for that crap. Next Saturday, go bang on her door at 7:30 a.m. and let her know you got rid of that branch, but her grass is a 1/4 inch too long." Another commenter down below called CDBCC-SB said, "I bought a house that had been empty for 2 years. Nothing but grief from most of the neighbors. They were waiting for the price to drop so they could get it really cheap. Lived there 11 years. They were pissy the entire time." I'm not sure I agree with either of these comments because I feel like we could take a different approach to this. Maybe cook up a batch of cookies, take them over, introduce yourself, and just talk. Tell them you know they had a bad experience, but you're really sorry they did. That you would have loved for the tree to be there, but you're sorry that it's not, even though you had nothing to do with that. If this neighbor gets a chance to vent and you show sympathy, you can probably make this situation 100 times better. I'm not saying you're gonna be friends, but maybe the pettiness will go away. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.